Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Help promote and rank up our channel. Sorry I'm late on this one. We're going to be doing a spoiler review of Fear Street Part 3, 1666. The final installment, the final payoff. This will be a spoiler review. Let me know in the comment section what you thought of these films so far, especially this third entry. What are your thoughts on it? How do you feel about it? How do you feel about the payoff, the climax, the conclusion? So let's talk about the positives. And the positives on this one, a few jokes you may get a chuckle out of, some good closing results, payoffs to certain character arcs, girl-on-girl action, if that's your thing. So in present day 1994, Dina reunites Sarah Fier's hand with her body in hopes of ending the Shadyside curse. She ends up having a vision instead of the events leading up to the curse from Sarah Fier's perspective. For a big duration of the film, we're in 1666. The acting at this point is better than it has been, along with the believability of accurately reflecting the time period. Now, granted, I wasn't alive then, or was I? Accents, clothing, town, and set pieces feel really authentic, along with the growing hysteria leading up to the witch hunt and ultimately the demise of Sarah Fier. The actress playing Sarah Fier, actually does a much better job with that role than she does with her own primary character. Actors that played other characters return to populate this world as characters from their bloodline. The music is on point and doesn't feel like it's beating you over the head this time around. The characters, aside from Sarah Fier, her love interest in Solomon Good, aren't much to speak of. But the suspense, the build-up, the intrigue, and the horrors that come packaged with that are really solid, escalating to a great climax. There's mistrust, suspicion, and people just getting worked up into a frenzy like a bunch of piranha. But the twist it relies on is all too predictable. And the modern 1994 stuff that takes place for the final portion of the film, the second half, our third act, sees our surviving characters teaming up to try to tactically end the Shadyside curse, and while being well shot and decorated up, this portion of the film unfortunately felt really lacking. With that said, let's move over to the negatives. And the negatives on this one, this one's actually just a minor nitpick, but I didn't like the fact that they were using same actors from modern times to portray characters set in 1666, because it takes you out of the immersion of it, the believability. Yes, there are certainly going to be people from the family tree that will look like others, but absolutely identical. I just didn't like the inclusion. Another big problem I had with the movie is the first part of the movie, the 1666 stuff, really amps up tension, really amps up the anxiety levels and what's going to happen, the mystery, all that. It does all that, really building tensions very, very well. Whereas in comparison to the second act, just pales in comparison to it. They feel like two completely different movies forced together. It's really uneven. The 1666 stuff takes up a big portion of the film, feels like an isolated story, and then the modern day stuff feels like its own isolated story, and they just really feel mashed together. Whereas you could have jumped back and forth to really build on tensions, anxiety, and the mystery even further in a well-balanced way, one that doesn't feel like you're forcing two completely different movies together. Another problem is the 1994 stuff that comes in the second half of the film is not superior to the stuff that comes before that, the 1666, where they really amplify tension. The second portion of the film, the 1994 modern day stuff, feels like there's a lack of consequences for our good characters. It feels really safe. It feels very cheesy, clumsy, and just awful in comparison to the first portion of the film. You've also got them including this character from this very minor character from the first film, recruiting him to the team, and it just feels really flimsy that this guy would risk his life, our freedom, to help these people that he barely knows. Sure, this kid helped him out, which was weird in the first one. He helped him get out of cuffs, get out of the precinct, not knowing if this guy's really a bad, terrible person or not. And I felt that that was kind of woke with the way the framing of the cop in the first movie. It felt like cop bad, cops hard on minorities. So it felt like that kind of framing. And here we are again in the third film with that payoff. The cops are bad. The white men are bad. This film does have woke elements. This whole trilogy has woke elements sprinkled through it, from cop bad, white guy bad, to, you know, people are homophobic, and there's LGBT highlights, stuff like that. There's a lot of wokeness throughout this stuff. And I still feel that this is really uneven. Like, I noticed some things in the first one. I noticed how the cop was. He seemed like a bad guy. I thought it was weird that they would just let this criminal go. They were framing it that way. That stuff seems weird. Then the second part comes along. The guy who does become sheriff seems like a pretty good, likable dude at the time. But he does say this really weird thing like, I've let a lot of people die tonight. I'm not going to let you die tonight. That really stood out and stuck with me when I watched that one. And I was hoping that it wouldn't go this direction, but it was really predictable in that area. I was really disappointed with the way they framed Sarah Fier as this kind of victimized thing, victimhood stuff, instead of going all in on that dark, just evil. There's an actual witch who is a monster and cursed these other people for what they did to her. Instead, you've got a dude, the only the only male that you could remotely frame as a good guy back then, only one Sarah Fier could trust back then, turning out to be the bad guy, to be responsible. I really didn't like that subvert your expectation. These things not have good twist in my opinions. They're incredibly, insanely predictable, are just a real hard stretch. When it came to having the same actors play these 1666 versions, it didn't feel like they were different enough. It just felt like characters displaced in time, because these characters felt too similar to their modern day counterparts. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them. But it's mostly the modern day 1994 stuff that really lacks stakes. It really feels just absent of stakes for the good characters. These serial killer type characters don't come off all that threatening or imposing this time around, as they kind of deal with them with ease, block them off. And what actually leads to Dina defeating the sheriff, it just seems so lackluster to have him touch this thing, get a bunch of flash of memories, and then get killed while he's getting all those flashes, and then characters just leaving this dark book there to be discovered, to be picked up by somebody else. Really, really stupid, dumb. I would give this a 5 out of 10. I don't like the way this film sets up things to try to subvert your expectations. I don't like the predictability of some of these things. It's a really mismatch. I think the 1666 stuff was really well executed, really well done, in comparison to the 1994 stuff that just really lackluster, lacking real dire stakes or consequences. It just feels really like a brush off in comparison to the first half of the movie. I did not like the route it went with, oh, she's not actually this dark evil witch seeking revenge on everybody. She's just a victim. It was a really average film. The back half of the film doesn't compare to the first half of the film in tension, threat level. It just doesn't compare. It doesn't compete. They're like two different films thrown together. One is superior, and it's the one that you start off with, whereas the second half is really underwhelming. Let me know your thoughts and opinions, though. Did you enjoy this entire trilogy? Do you think it's great? Do you think it's really solid? Do you think this is the best payoff to what we've got previously? Do you think this was the best way to go? Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Stay awesome. Rock on.